What am I even doing? What is going on, guys? And today we are back and we're doing something different. We are going to start going over a little bit of my gameplay that I record post to Rumble. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out 1, 2, 3 hands during the course of the week that I think I need to improve, could have played better. Maybe I did something right, but maybe it looked a little bit funky. We're going to use any sort of tools at our discretion to kind of look at it. Obviously, the play on words here, we're going to call it a dereliction of duty. But I think this is a really good opportunity, one, for me to review my play, and two, to pick out some spots that I think I need a little bit of work on, that if I'm probably need a little bit of work on too, anyone who was watching this probably also at the same time, to can probably wouldn't hurt to brush up on some of the things that we're going to look at as well. If anyone has any tools or anything that they want me to look at or recommend, please let me know. I'll take a look at it. I know there's a ton of stuff that I'm going to be using. Also, I'll start probably jumping into a little bit of Pio worked in Limit Hold'em as well. Maybe use that also in some of like the 1-1 spots and deuce, as we've seen someone like Chris Fitch use in the past. But as of right now, we're going to use things like Odds Oracle, Stud Flop Draw, 2dimes.net, basically anything that can give us a sense of if we're making the right decisions or not. And again, this is just another way for you guys to learn. And yeah, so we got 2 hands for you this week. We're going to jump right in at the start. Again, any questions or comments, you can leave below. And all right, without any further ado, let's get into hand 1. All right, guys, hand 1 here is a badugi hand, and I was playing 2 games at this time, not trying to make any excuse for it, but this is definitely one of those hands in game I was kind of doing, what am I doing with this hand? So on the button here, we have a queen badugi. We're definitely opening 100% badugis here on the button, especially 3-handed. So we will just kind of jump right into this one here. Do raise the button. CR, I believe, is going to call, and Haikairu is also going to call. And it's going to go, I believe, 2-1, and then I decided to break one. And I think this is where I just make a mistake. One, I think this is just a pad, even though like I do have some convertibility theoretically here with 3-card 9. I think just keeping the queen in position and kind of taking my equity with this one is totally fine. Also, my draw here isn't the best. There's a couple things going for my hand and not at the same time. The first one I would say is like, great, I have a queen badugi, I have an opponent drawing 2, I have person drawing 1, I'm in position. So I can just kind of just pat my hand and play it as is. If I break and draw to the 9, again, I don't have a ton of playability with respect to even making the 9. Like if I make my basement card here, as I like to call it, and catch the deuce of diamonds, 9-6 deuce, I probably am able to put in like maybe 1 raise at some point, depending on what happens. But even then, I'm not loving my hand by any means. So I think what I want to do in this situation is just pat. And if someone decides to maybe like check call pat or do something like that in front of me, then we can theoretically comfortably break to the 9. If we get check raised, we're kind of in an ugly position. We could break, but again, I think actually breaking makes a little bit of sense. But on one of those, I think what you have to do is if you break, you basically kind of have to turn your hand into a semi-bluff the whole way through. So when you have these type of like 3 cards and you block some of the combos from your opponent's calling, I would say like having an ace and a 6 is not necessarily the blockage that you want. You probably want to have something like 2 to wheel in your hand. That's a little bit better because then you block your opponent from having a couple of those extra 3 cards that can call you at the river. Usually your opponent's not going to call you with like a 3-card 8, 3-card 7, but they can easily be drawing to something like that in this position. So I think honestly, I think that the best choice here is just to keep the queen badugi and then kind of like play it accordingly, like how my opponents play their hands. But I think the next best option is to break the queen badugi and to kind of just bet every street and kind of turn this hand into a bluff, unless we reduce in this situation, maybe make a 3-card 6. And, if we reduce to a 3-card 6, we don't have to turn our hand into a bluff on the river or even a value bet. Say we make like ace 4-6 going into the river and it goes 1-1-1 and we don't improve and it goes check, check. We can just check back. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but we can just take our equity in this situation. But if we get to the river and we still have a 3-card 9, we can theoretically turn our hand into a bluff with the ace 6-9. Again, I don't love having the 6 theoretically in my hand. I'd rather probably have like a 2, 3, or 4, maybe even probably a 5 either. That's probably just a little bit better. But Those are definitely like some of the ways that I think you can think about when you're turning your hands into snows and badugis. But I think just having the queen badugi here, we just have plenty of equity. So in game, we'll kind of just let this one play out a little bit. But I do decide to break the queen again. I think that's the mistake. And even if I make that mistake in this situation here, I should just start turning my hand into a bluff. And I don't. I just check back. Again, this is why we call this dereliction of duty, is we make mistakes. And definitely going on in game, I'm like, what am I doing here? And I should just, at some point, you can always just abandon ship and actually maybe turn your hand into a bluff that wouldn't necessarily be a bluff. I'm even kind of thinking myself, it's like, what am I doing here? So it goes check, check. I believe again. With no improvement, and now it goes 1-1. And CR definitely should have the best 3 card in this situation. I think CR can be a little bit sticky here, so catching a card that we don't love. If I maybe paired the ace or paired the 6, I probably would have turned it into a bluff, and we can see here he has the 3 card 6, and he's going to win that one. So again, I don't really love the way I played this hand by any means. But again, this is why we're reviewing the hands and we're kind of going over it. Because in the future, like, this is just a small mistake, like, $11 pot. But if we're playing 15-30 or 20-40 or something like that, we definitely want to have better tools in our repertoire when we're playing against players who are definitely going to make us pay. And we definitely want to be balanced in these situations as well. Plus, again, don't love the fact that I just broke the queen badugi. But, if we make mistakes, we just review our play and we go to the next one. So that was the first hand. Let's go to hand 2. All right, guys, hand 2 here is a stud high-low regular hand, and we're going to use whatever tools that we can basically find here to kind of look into the math on a later street. But I wanted to start off basically by going over the rules of this one, because again, if you're not familiar with stud high-low any, this is a game where there is no qualifier for the low, meaning that the best ace to 5 Raz hand is going to get half the pot, and the best stud high hand is going to get half the pot. This game is played very similarly to stud 8 or better, and it's also basically dealt as as Raz. So you'll see here that the high brings it in, and then the low is going to drive the action the rest of the hand. But here in this situation, it folds to us, and we have 10, 3, 4, 3 clubs. So we start with 3 to a 10 low plus 3 to a flush. Very easy open here against another 10. We're probably opening close to 100% here. You could probably fold like your absolute worst hands, like your king, queen offsuits. But the 10 here he might be doing a little bit of defending, but shouldn't be doing too much unless he's got like maybe something like 3 suited spades, maybe like an ace with a wheel card kind of thing, because my range should be pretty wide in this situation. But here we have obviously a pretty easy open with a 3 flush plus 4. So we're going to open this one. We do get called. And then interesting card here, we catch a 10. And so it's very unlikely here that Zip has a split 10. So I would say like more often than not, he has some sort of like straightening cards, some sort of like low cards, maybe an ace in the hole. It's definitely an interesting 4 street card here, but we do have a 3 flush, and I don't think any clubs were dead at this point. So he is the low, theoretically here, with the 10-3 versus the 10-4. So he is going to be pushing the action here. And if he checks to us, I think we actually just go ahead and bet our hand. We have 10s, we have a flush draw, and we also have a 10 low draw. Again, this street is pretty interesting as well. Now we pick up 2 10s. We have a 10-9 low draw. That is our low, like our Raz low draw in this situation. And Zip here catches a card that should be pretty good for his range, actually. So if he's defending the 10 and he doesn't have like jacks plus in his range, he basically has like something around the lines of maybe like 3 straightening cards or like an ace in the hole. Again, this is kind of a close one because he probably has some sort of straight draw now, or he has some sort of like 10 low with an ace, or he's got a pair and a better 10 low draw. So with respect to the math in this situation, we can actually pull up a couple tools here and look at both sides of the equation. All right, really quick here, I'm going to use a tool called, it's 2dimes.net. Anyone can use this. This is free. The syntax is relatively easy. It's basically just text format. We'll get into it in a second here. But just to review really quick here on 5th Street, Zip has decided to call. He has the 10-3-6. We have the 10-10. with a 10-9 low draw and a 4 flush. And again, the question here is realistically like who's going to be a favorite going forward, because once he checks, we can actually, I think, assume some things about his hand. Again, our range is relatively wide. So if that's the case here, we can kind of look to see at what the different hand ranges look like. I haven't found a good tool with respect to Pro Poker Tools is actually quite good at doing ranges and figuring out like what your equity is against their range. They don't have that with respect to any. You can use something like stud flop draw. The problem is you have to assign what their relative range is and versus basically it's kind of the same thing of doing what I'm doing over here for the most part. You can give them like a really tight range, like maybe the ace deuce of spades or something like that to see how they're doing. But to kind of narrow it down specifically, you have to kind of enter in, I would say, like the different formats. So we can kind of look over here real quick and we can see the different equities with respect to like what's going on. So like the first hand here, every single one of these hands, this is my top hand over here. And then the bottom hand is, I gave him different like ranges of what we can kind of see. I gave him 4 different hands. We'll kind of look through it real quick. If he has something like ace deuce in the hole with 10-3-6, we can see here we're basically flipping range on range. So he has a pretty good, as we can see, like over here with respect to the low, he's got a pretty big lock on the low, and we have a pretty big lock on the high in a situation like this with our 4 flush. If we go over to the next one, I gave him something like a straight draw, so say he's got like 7-8 in the hole. Same kind of deal here. We are still technically an underdog to that range because he is still pushing a little bit of definitely like free rolling us more often than not with the low equity versus high equity. We're still kind of flipping. And then if we look at maybe like what some sort of like pairs he might have in this situation, like maybe he's got 2 8s in the hole. A 10, I mean, a 10 is possible, but it's just, there's one case 10 left on the deck. So I'm not going to worry about that too much in this situation. But as we can see here, when we start looking at the pairs that he could theoretically have in this spot, we start to see that we start pushing equity a little bit more. And also here at the same time too, like say he has a 6 in the hole, like do 6 or something like that, and just decided to peel pretty light. We can also see here that we are still pushing a fair bit of equity. So with that being said, I still think if our opponent checks in this situation and doesn't bet, it's more likely that he has a hand that could either pair or maybe has some sort of brick in the hole. If he leads into us, I don't think we're ever raising. Again, just be based off the fact that, once looking at those equities, I would say that, we're not really pushing any equity by raising in the situation, even with a pair, a low draw and a flush draw in this situation. But once he checks, I still think we have a little bit of equity to go ahead and bet. Also, too, when we bet this street, if like we both catch bricks on the next one, it's a little bit more interesting because then at that point, we can decide how to go forward with it. If he checks to us, we can decide to check back or bet. So let's see how this one played out. I think with this combo, I did bet 6th Street, or I'm sorry, 5th Street. And on 6th Street here, again, it kind of gets a little bit tricky now with respect to his exact hand and our exact hand at the same point. So we are staring at open 10s now, and technically we have the low lead as we do in Raz, because this game is now dealt as ace to 5 Raz. So we have a decision here whether we want to bet now or if we want to check. And again, we can kind of just change a little bit of the equities and see what's going on. So let's do that. So if we quickly go over here and look at the hands real fast, we can see that if he has something like the 10s and 6s hand at this point, we're basically flipping. If he has something like the 10s and 8s hand, again, we're like he made a pair, we're basically flipping, really no change. If he has something like the gut shot now with 2 10s, we are a dog with about 44% equity. And if we look at something like he has ace deuce in the hole and he caught those pair 10s, we are a significant 2-1 dog in this situation. So I like the idea of checking in this situation. So we will see what we did here. And then, I mean, we're definitely calling. We're not folding at this point. There's no question, even if we check and he bets. The only question is like how we proceed going forward. Again, it definitely is going to matter here. If we check and he checks behind, then the ranges should definitely change. Like he shouldn't have ace deuce in the hole. He should be a pretty significant favorite at that point. So we can kind of remove, like I would say, some of his range. But let's go forward here and see what he does. I'm thinking pretty hard about what to do in this spot, and I decided to check. At the time, it actually felt like kind of a dirty check. I'm not going to lie. The reason being is because you know, something didn't feel right because like obviously calling on uh 6th Street there and he catches that card. Usually he has you beat one way or the other, even though we have a relatively good draw. Now, the only question here on the river is what do we do? And we can, I believe, throw in the deuce of hearts into the river here, and we can see what happens on our 2 dimes. All right, going really back really quick, we give ourselves the 2 hearts on the river, and basically, I believe if you do not enter in this space right here, it becomes a wild card. So as we can see here against like something like the 10s and 6s, technically he's free rolling us at this point. So again, we can see that our equity is about 25% in this spot. Same thing over here with the 10s and 8s. He is technically free rolling us with the 10s and the 9s. So we don't want to bet in this situation too if we think his range looks something along those lines. If we go over to the gut shot straight draw and the 10s, obviously kind of the same thing here. Don't really want to be betting because again, he's technically free rolling us from that end, and the same thing over here. With respect to the 10s with the ace deuce, he's also free rolling us. We can still see our equity, like we still are gonna like be check calling the river no matter what in this situation. The only question is again, like going back to this specific spot here, I basically gave my opponent hands that are basically totally free rolling me. I don't think that's the necessarily case at this point, just based off the fact of kind of how this hand is played out. I actually think kind of like running through some of these scenarios that if my opponent here doesn't have like ever a brick in the hole or like, you know, a high pair, if he does have a high pair in the hole, we're technically free rolling to get the fold. But if he doesn't have that in this situation here, then I think I just like checking and calling, kind of just looking at the basic math in this situation. But since my opponent here decided to check 6th Street, I thought a lot of the combinations that I kind of put him on, whether it be the gut shots or the ace lows or the 2 pairs or something like that, I didn't think that he would necessarily have those here, especially my board is not super threatening with a 4-10-9 deuce, considering that I have close to 100% of steal range in this situation. So given that fact, I actually went for a thin value bet on this river and got snap raised, which is not a good sign because usually I would say like this is a lot of times like this is something like straight, could be a full house. So I think like technically I have to call the river. Combinatorically, like I kind of hate my hand just because like I have 2 10s and a 3 in my hand. Like he could have 6s full here or something like that. You know, he could have the off the beating path flush or something like that with like a king. So probably just have to pay off once we get here. But a lot of times I would say like this is kind of a straight. Again, like we have 2 deuces in our hand, but we are like missing the 7s and 8s, and we do have 1 9 in our hand. So I think a lot of times here, once we get to this river and he's kind of like done this, I think this is going to be a straight. But once we bet, I think we just have to sigh and call the river. You know, going back at it, if he does have these like straightening cards in his hand, I would say that we do make the mistake of betting the river. But when he checks back 6th Street, I think it's just a little less likely. But as we can see here in a second, we are going to call, and he does show up with like the 7 8 9 10. So I think technically he probably missed a thin bet when he made those open 10s on 6th Street when we checked to him. But besides that, I think like the hand was probably played fine from both sides. Again, like I would just have to narrow down my perspective of what I think Zip here has in this situation on 6th Street when he checks back, because I didn't think that he would check back something like this. I mean, he definitely could have just like gutter balled the 7 and had like something like 10 10 8 9 6 3. But I think like just having that type of hand is probably worth a bet against my range and my exact hand. Again, just wanted to give you guys kind of a taste of what this is going to look like going forward with respect to the hand histories. So I hope you enjoyed it. And again, this is something that helps me too, going over kind of looking at the mistakes that I think I'm making and how I can just get better as a player. Any questions or comments, leave them below. As always, good luck at the tables. Talk to you guys soon. Play well. Bye-bye.